Hello and welcome back to the worst War Machine channel on the internet. I'm Malorian and this is Malorian Weekly. And what we're going to be talking about today is caster design. Now, the reason why this is even a topic and why it came up is just over the last week on the forums, it wasn't even about this, but somebody saying like, oh yeah, you should do a video or some sort of tactica on Ashlyn 2 because, wow, she is so poorly designed. And at that point, it's like, wait, stop. You know, in my head, what are you talking about? Because she is not poorly designed. And we had some chatting about it and blah, blah, blah. But I thought, you know what? I should really do a video talking about caster design. So what we're going to do in this then is we're going to talk about what caster design actually is, what good caster design is, and then kind of go over some examples. And at the end of the day, we can see whether Ashlyn 2 is actually a good caster design, a bad one, or somewhere in between. So for this, let's first of all just define what caster design is. And it's pretty simple. I mean, whenever you're designing a warcaster, a warlock, an infernal master, whatever it is, there is the design to it. And I mean, honestly, when it comes to PP, they don't have like a big bag full of like little pieces of paper that has all these different stats on it and spells and abilities and feats. And they're like, shake, shake, shake. Okay, this one's going to be Mat 7. Shake, shake, shake. This one's going to have TK, right? They have thought into it where this is supposed to do something very specifically in this faction with these models, especially trying to maybe get ones that aren't normally used. But what I'm trying to get at is that this isn't like a caster draft. This isn't a random mix of abilities and things. It is specifically tailored to do something. So that is what it's trying to do. Now, the next thing we have to talk about is, well, what is good caster design? And this is where things get really interesting, because that means that all of a sudden now we need to have measurable metrics, right? That really implies that there's a scale, and on one side, there'll be a bad design, and on the other side, there'll be a good design. Now, as we go through this and as we're trying to define this and trying to wander through this to figure out what actually is good caster design and what's bad ones, I'm going to be using two examples for this video. The first one is going to be the lady we already talked about, Ashlyn 2. So she is the latest one, the Queen Ashlyn. Her friends are up here as well. We'll talk about them a little bit later, but she'll go front and stage. And then the other lady that we're going to be comparing that to is Sloane. So one, a mercenary caster. The other one, well, kind of like an infernal Signar caster. Now, with those in mind, let's kind of look at the way that they were designed. And we're going to start with the easiest one first, as my phone, of course, decided to close just that second, and that's going to be Sloane. So what does Sloane actually do? And again, this isn't a caster review, so I'm not going to fully go over everything, but let's just very quickly look at what really Sloane is. Well, when you look at Sloane, she is a range caster. Sure, she has a sword that she never ever uses, but she has this weapon master long range Spitfire rifle that's, you know, range 14, weapon master like we talked about. Her field marshal for her troops is going to be true sight. She gets as well, so that everything can be seen through clouds and stealth. For spells, are going to be having things like fire group and guided fire and return fire, all about pew, 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 pew. And when it comes to her feat, well, it says right there that when she does this, when she casts it, you get fire group for free, and then her and entire battle group get an extra range attack that turn. So what does that card tell you when I look at this? Well, it tells me one thing. Pew, 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 pew. I'm going to take this and I'm going to make this as shooty as possible. Everything on this card says take a battle group full of guns and shoot with it. It's like, it might as well just be written on the card because that's what everything on the card is telling you to do. So what was this caster designed to do? To be a real ranged presence, to really say, I am going to be the at least shooty caster. Okay, that's great. I'm looking at deeper into like the types and the faction stuff, but let's just say that. That's a general thing right there. I am the shooty battle group caster. Okay, fine. That's great. That's great. Well, what about Ashlyn? Well, once we get to Ashlyn, this is where things get a lot more complex. So this is like we said, this is going to be Queen Ashlyn. And so for her, she actually has a hand cannon, so she can shoot and do things. She has pretty good rat and mat. She has, instead, a Weapon Master sword that's range 2, and she has a bunch of abilities around this. You know, she's going to be having Thresher on that sword. She has Hero of the People, so if she kills something, then friendly warrior models within her command get +2 to their attack rolls. She has Tactician Lealese. She has Vengeance on there from, well, that's from the themes. That's not yet. She has Groundwork for spells. She has Artifice of Deviation, which is like this 5-inch AoE that goes out there that's either rough terrain or cover for friendly. And there's Blood of Liberty, which is all friendly living Lealese models get tough and unyielding. Hand of Fate, which is a model unit gets an additional die for attack and damage, and then drop the lowest. Perdition, which is really kill something with this spell, and then something from my battle group gets the move. True Path, where your faction warrior models get +2 movement, and Pathfinder. And then her feat brings back D3 solo models. Sorry, that's not right. It just brings back 3 solo models that are point cost 6 or less. And then really the thing that happens is that whenever your warrior models are destroyed on that turn, if they're in the control range, they get to make an attack before they are fully off the table. Now, we're not even done there yet because she has 2 little friends. One of them being, well, they're both duelists, but one is like point blank with the guns, and it's going to be granting for them reposition. The other little friend is going to be granting the Reposite, so that's the one where if you miss me, I get to fight back. But basically 2 little friends will be going with him. So what does this caster want to do? If the other one is all about guns, 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 well, what does she want to do? And then when you really look at the card, the big thing that's on there is warrior models. There's a lot of rules in there that are all about warrior models. So whether it's warrior models coming back to life, getting extra attacks, being faster, getting unyielding, something like that, it's really warrior models get better. Now, you could look at that and say like, okay, well then that's pretty straightforward. One is pew, 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 I'm all guns, and the other one is warrior models. All right, I guess that's your caster design. What's this video about, Malorian? Well, here's the thing. On one side, when you want to make a list for Sloan, you take Sloan, you take Shooty Warjacks, you say copy and paste until you can't anymore, and you have a really good list, and you're good to go. When you want to make a list for Ashlyn, things get a little bit more challenging, and the reason for that is that there's a lot of stipulations on this card. I mean, if you want things like Hero of the People to actually trigger, she has to be upfront doing work. And even after you're doing that, it's only giving bonuses to things that are around you. So she really wants to be up there fighting, and then having the other things that are making attacks up there and fighting with her as well, which maybe is where things of like Tactician comes in. But then again, if we look at things like a Blood of Liberty, this is only for living Lealese models. Well, there's not a lot of Lealese models. I mean, she is, so that's something. But unless you're playing inside of something like the Lealese theme, you're not going to have a lot of Lealese troops. I mean, maybe those will come out later, but as of right now, the only way to really get mass Lealese troops is in that Lealese faction. And the problem with that is that she has another spell, which is the True Path, which gives your warrior models +2 movement and Pathfinder, but if it's on Lealese, they already have Pathfinder. And the other problem is that she only has so much focus, and if she's supposed to be frontline, she really can't cast all these things, especially if she wants to be camping something. So how do I build this? How is this supposed to be actually designed? Well, in my list, and now we're talking about caster design. So here's the thing, even though it was very clear at the onset where one is pew 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 battle group and the other one is fighty fight warrior models, well, it's not that easy. And even if we look at things like the feat, sure, the feat gets you to bring back solos, but do I build my list around that and say I want to have a bunch of solos that'll go in first and die? Or do I want to build it around the second part? And if I'm doing it around the second part, what part do I do? Do I make it like Legion of Lost Souls? So like you kill me, then I kill you back with my sword? But what if you're not in melee range? Do I want guns then? Maybe I want to do it in Lealese and take gun mages and be like, you kill me and I shoot you back. And then what about that whole like Blood of Liberty thing? Well, now I have Lealese models, but do I actually care if my gun mages have unyielding? Tough is nice, but. And this is the thing that people will look at and be like, she is poorly designed because look, not all of her things are all about synergizing for one thing. So let's actually now talk about design a little bit more deeply and what good actually is. Well, if we're looking at this from a competitive player's standpoint, or even like a middle of the road, semi-competitive type person, they'll want to look at a caster and they want to say that all the synergies there are going for one main strategy that I can dial up to 11. They also want to see things like they want to see answers for different things. So they want to see a toolbox. They would love it if every single thing had like an armor debuff, a strength buff for your side, hexproof or something to take off spells from the other side, like all these little tools. But otherwise, you want to see something where there's all this synergy, so I can be just saying, I'll take a list based on this, and it'll be super crazy powerful. And that's what Sloan is. When it comes to that competitive side, Sloan is almost like the dream that everybody wants to see. Especially when it came out with the Infernal side, where now like, oh, all my jacks get 2 free focus, basically, one for being a jack and another one for being by these soulless things because of the theme. Oh, well, that's easy. This is fantastic. Again, take Sloan, pick a range jack, copy and paste, thumbs up, I'm doing good. Now, that's all well and good, but does PP think that that's good game design? Probably not. And the reason why they don't think that's good game design is because, well, one, it's boring. As me as a player for Sloan, playing either with Sloan or against Sloan, she is just not fun. Basically, I go up there and I shoot, and then either I win or I don't, or I'm playing against Sloan, and at some point, I have to go within that range, that threat of 22 inches of the hunters, and then either I'm going to survive or I'm not. Either I'm going to be able to have enough to win on scenario or get some sort of assassination or something, but it's really just like boom and go, and that's really it. So not really that tactical play. And I think for another thing to keep in mind there too is that PP and the people who are designing this are also looking for negative game experiences as well. So for new players, they're just like, okay, I'm here to play and my caster's going to walk to here. And you're like, okay, poop boom Sloan, goodbye, you lose the game. That makes it feel bad. Even if you're a person that understands Sloan, knowing as a new player that, or feeling like a new player, that I just can't do anything here. No matter what, I have to get shot, and I basically just have to run into you and let you shoot down my best things and then just have garbage to try and beat you. And that's, as a new player, that's really punishing, and it doesn't really entice me to want to play this again. It's really just like, why am I doing this? Just like, yeah, sure, shoot up my things and I'll take it off the board, and I'm just going to start at the bar. I'm just going to go get a drink now. You just take this win and whatever. And that's not good when you're looking from that side, either in enjoyment, and again, that's going to be gray because people will actually enjoy winning simply like that, but they have to realize that those feel bads and those things are going to be making these negative game experiences are created by things like Sloan. Well, what does PP then think about things about like Ashland 2? I'm sure they love Ashland 2. And the reason why they would love Ashland 2 and what they did with it is because it is specifically designed to not be going down one path. Sure, there is a nudge where like we want to have warrior models, but otherwise they are giving you a buffet of options and saying, hey, in the buffet of warrior models, these are all the things you can do. Create whatever list you would like. And the nice thing about this is several-fold. One, you're not kind of pinned into being like, oh, well, I would love to play Sloan with other things, but I'd really be a dunce for doing it because I'm really super motivated to build it one way, which really means that if I'm in a mirror match of Sloan versus Sloan, the big things are like, oh, how many hunters / Minutemen did you take? Oh, okay, I'm in the, you always see these, the 3+3+ whatever numbers for defining what's of the light jacks you took the most of, like that's the difference of the Sloan list. Whereas if you compare Ashland lists, they're all over the table, right? Some of them are taking a bunch of like storm lances. Some of them are taking rocket men. Some of them are taking the gun mages. Some of them are taking the Legion of Lost Souls. Some of them are taking a mix of things. Some of them are assassination based. Some of them are with trenchers and they're defensive based. There's so many ways to be building Ashland 2, and what that does is, first of all, gives it more playability, right? It always makes it so it's more interesting to be like, ooh, I could be doing this, doing this. Otherwise, with Sloan, it's like, okay, grab my hunters and let's go. The idea that, if the only caster I owned was Ashland 2, I could play that for a year, only that, and just keep on building different things of it and keeping it interesting for at least myself, not to mention my opponent. And there is no doubt in my mind that while I have this buffet and different things I can try, my opponents are also liking the fact that, okay, you are doing some very powerful things, but it's at least things I can interact with. It's not designed just to be like pew 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 all the guns from across the table. It's something where, okay, you do lots of different things and I can try, and there'll always be some little weaknesses I can try and go for and interact, and there'll be a game type thing, right? So I think that's where you have to really see, well, what are we going to be looking at for this good caster design? Are we going to say a good caster design is something that's super streamlined in one tactic like Sloan? Or are we going to say something that is going to be a good caster design is something like Ashland, which actually opens you up with a bunch of different avenues? There's not all the resources there or the ability to do everything at once. It's also a lot like Cray, right? Cray came out and people that played it loved it. They were saying like, Cray is amazing now. There's so many different things you can try and do, so many different builds. People were enjoying it. However, it disappeared from tournament play. And why did it disappear from tournament play? Well, because at the end of the day, a lot of the things that you're seeing at the top tables right now are something pushed to the extreme, like Sloan 2, like, Agathon blast you from the top of the table, to, like I have all the little crab men and infernals, all the tormentors, whatever it is. It's a lot of these things turned up to 11 that you're seeing in these types of tournament lists. You got Aurora 1 striking it from across the table. And it really then feels that if you want to play in this sort of, tournament type of setting, that you need to have something that's really pushed to that side. Now, here's my challenge to you. In a world where those things are out there, what is the real problem? The problem is that Ashland 2 is poorly designed because she cannot compete as well against some of those extremes that are dominating the tournaments? Or is it those casters that are designed in such a way that are designed poorly? Personally, that's what I really think is the way to say it. Things like Sloan, which is designed to do one thing and push it all the way, I think that's the thing that's poorly designed. That's the thing that, they basically said like, oh, here's this, no limits, go, go, go. That's the problem. If we were in a meta where everything was more like Ashland, that would be a great meta. That would be fantastic. You go to every game, people are taking whatever little bits of the buffet they did this time. It's not like, okay, I'm going to hear what caster you're taking and I can already guess your list, because they're always the same, because when you push these things to 11, this is naturally the way you build them. No, you're like, oh, I wonder how you built that, because there's so many different options. Oh, you did it like that. Very interesting. Let's play this game. As opposed to going to it and being like, okay, what's your pairing? Okay, I know exactly how those lists are made. I know exactly in this pairing what one should be dropped. And basically, based on who's going first in the terrain, we really know who's going to win this game, because we've pushed things to 11 and, well, paper, rock, scissors, that's the way it's going to show up. So what do we do going from here? Well, I think going from here, we need to, first of all, understand that we need more Ashland 2s and we need less Sloans. So as casters are going through CID, we have to encourage those that are going for a more balanced buffet type option, not synergy of one thing all the way to 11, and in those same CIDs where they're going and making whatever new caster that they're hoping to sell, they should be taking something old like Sloan and redeveloping it to being more in that area. Somebody might ask me like, well, how would you redesign Sloan to try being something more along that? Well, there's lots of ways you could do this. I mean, you could do something like the feat instead of being very huge and open and saying all your battle jacks. I'd hate to make it something where it's like D6 plus whatever in order how many jacks, but what if it was something that was dependent on something else, kind of like craze, right? What if it was something like whenever a warrior model destroyed an enemy model in your control range or blah, 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 then one of your battle group models gets an extra shot. Something like that where it's designed to have to be building with working with itself. Or maybe, hey, there's supposed to be multiple things where she has really good things for battle group on her card and really good things for warriors, and it encourages you to be taking a mix or deciding how that mix is going to be for that game. That's how these things have to be designed. So there you go. There's my rant battle. This turned into a 20-minute video. I didn't really intend that, but it's kind of a hard thing to get across, right? Unless you understand the different viewpoints of how a caster might be designed for like ultra competitive play or for actual like interesting game balance, saying what good design is kind of hard to actually validate and say. So there you go. I'm sure you have opinions on this, so please post it down below. And otherwise, we'll catch you later. Bye.